Okay, we're just finishing up Hidden History of Health and Science. Today's the conclusion, part 7 of Epidemiology. Just a couple things, like in Norway, around the time after World War II, where they had the rationing, there was a reduction in the patients having symptomatic episodes of multiple sclerosis where they reduced saturated fat. Also, Roy Swank, the neurologist from Harvard, MD, PhD, also Canada, later Oregon, he noted that in Norway you'd have more multiple sclerosis in the center of the country where people had a lot of dairy with a lot of saturated fat than they did in peripheral areas where they had less intake of saturated fat. Also in Finland, around 1970, there was a doctor named Pekka Puska who was involved in this thing called the Karelia Province Project, where they markedly reduced the intake of saturated fat from animal foods, increased the intake of fruits and vegetables, and reduced smoking, and they lowered the incidence of cardiovascular mortality by 84% pretty rapidly. So that's a dramatic, rapid improvement. And what I'm trying to say is it's always this way. You can go on and on. Wherever people eat more low-fat plant foods, less animal foods, less high-fat foods, less, oils, their health improves. Okay. Papua New Guinea, they were used to eat like as much as 92%, 93% of their calories from sweet potatoes. And the men were fit and strong and healthy. Their diet was about 94.6, almost 95% carbohydrate, only about 3% fat. 2.4% of calories from fat, 3% of calories from protein. So despite an incredibly low intake of protein, probably get a little higher than that because sweet potatoes are about 4.5% of calories from fat. So if you're eating that much, it's probably a little higher than that. Only 0.6% of linoleic acid. Okay, so hardly any fats. You don't need all these omega supplements. Seventh-day Adventists, we already talked about them. They're especially in Loma Linda, California. Tsimane population in Bolivia. They did a calcium CT scan of them. They had the lowest recorded coronary calcium scores for any population. A lot of populations haven't been studied. It was back in the day when they used to eat mostly plant foods. Around that time, they were only getting 8% of their calories from animal foods. And they had virtually 0% detectable coronary artery disease on a calcium cardiac CT. Nowadays, like so many other populations, they're being urbanized and getting more modern, so-called modern processed food, and that'll ruin their health just like it did for the people of Okinawa. Okay. And that's basically all I got. Here's some of the references if you want them. You can hit your print screen button to look that stuff up if you want. That's a picture of me with about half the books I've written. I think I was about 62 years of age in that picture. Or 63. Okay, here is when I was fat in my sort of early to mid 30s, and then I got skinny after that. It took me about 4 years once I learned the McDougall method of starch-based diet. The rest of the weight came off real fast. I was a star McDougall. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I was just saying, if I was a rich man and I could just have my own living room the way I would want it, I'd like an art gallery. That's what I would love. That's a Christian thing, an art gallery. If my new wife ever divorces me or tries to steal my money, I'm just going to go join a monastery. The secret path to health is be like Adam and Eve, but keep your indoor heating and plumbing. Genesis 1:29, I put plants on earth for you. Basically in the end, you either go God's way or man's way. God's way is eat a low-fat, plant-based diet, avoid toxins, and exercise, get your sun, be religious, have a purpose in life. That makes people healthy. On average, you probably lived about 90 or so. Okay, you go down man's way, eating all this processed food, meat, oils, high-fat foods, caffeine, stress, lack of sleep. You get hooked on a bunch of pills, drug. The pills don't work. You go for surgery, chop, bye-bye money. You're broke, in pain, and dead prematurely. That's what most people do, and they're cognitively slow by 60, if not sooner. Here's the health nirvana pyramid. At the bottom, health hell is paleo, keto, carnivore, for chumps, for morons. Sad diet for sick and stupid people. Mediterranean diet, promoted by pseudo-intellectuals to trick people. And then there's lacto-ovo, lacto-pesco, all those subtypes of vegetarian. Philosophic vegans, animal rights vegans. They're mostly watermelons. And then higher steps up towards nirvana: no processed food, no sweets, filtering your water, no oils, not one drop, no added sodium, and watching out for the Mediterranean diet fats, nuts, seeds, avocados, soy, all that junk. And you should be organic only. So that's health nirvana, full professor nirvana. Okay, here's a nice painting about the cycle of life by Walter Crane. All right, and then after that, that's just the index, and then I got pictures of my books and stuff. So anyways, I hope you found that helpful.